The protagonist of our story was unable to use magic, but he dedicated his life to studying alchemy and devoted all his time to it. While the world was on the brink of destruction by a celestial entity, he obtained an elixir that enabled him to create the Philosopher's Stone, which merged with his body. After that, he was killed and sent back in time 11 years. However, this time, he could wield magic and still possess the Philosopher's Stone. Will he be able to save humanity and his loved ones from their inevitable fate this time? How will he use the Philosopher's Stone and the knowledge from his past life to achieve that? This is what we will discover in today's story. Our story begins on a dark and rainy night, where a group of people lie lifeless on the ground, having been eliminated. However, one individual manages to escape the massacre and survive. Soon, it becomes clear that the survivor is a girl, who is spotted by the perpetrators of the massacre. They start calling on each other to chase her down and prevent her escape. At that moment, their leader appears and orders them to stop, stating that pursuing the girl further would only result in unnecessary bloodshed. This leader is revealed to be called Master Cho, and he adds that maintaining awareness is now the most critical task. Cho glances at the scattered bodies on the ground, stopping at one in particular, that of someone named Hyuk. Cho remarks that Hyuk had been a remarkable hero for a small village like theirs, but now he is a thing of the past. Then, he smiles widely, declaring that Hyuk is finished, and that there is no longer anything to worry about concerning him. Turning to everyone, he questions whether he does not deserve to be considered a god after all he has accomplished. He lifts his gaze to the sky, addressing an unseen entity, and wonders if this achievement fulfills the promise he made. At that moment, a powerful flash of light appears in the sky, and a fearsome eye manifests. A voice is heard, confirming to Cho that he has indeed fulfilled his promise. Cho demands that the voice fulfill its end of the bargain and elevate him to become part of the celestial constellation. The voice responds affirmatively, but suddenly reveals a system notification. After analyzing the data, it declares that number 274, Cho, is unqualified to ascend as a celestial god. Cho is left in utter shock, unable to believe what he is seeing, while the system continues its analysis. Another notification emerges, explaining that the candidate who had qualified to join the celestial constellation, Hyuk, is deceased, meaning there is no longer a reason for number 274 to remain on Earth. Enraged by this revelation, Cho's fury intensifies when the system announces that his protection has been revoked due to the erasure of the entire galaxy's existence. The voice bluntly informs Cho of his disqualification. Losing control, Cho screams, accusing the voice of deceiving him. He insists that the promise was clear. If he killed Hyuk, he would be elevated to the celestial ranks. The voice responds that it did say so, but also mentioned that further analysis might prove him unworthy. Then, lightning begins to strike Cho and his companions, obliterating them all. Amid this scene, the voice seems to relish the chaos, proclaiming that such moments are always refreshing. It concludes by declaring its intention to consume the entire world. The scene shifts to a distant village, far removed from these events. The girl who escaped Cho's men arrives at a house and opens the door, calling out for someone named Kim. Upon seeing him, she asks what he is doing this time and what he is working on. In front of Kim lies a large collection of books and tools for research and experiments. Kim seems surprised by her arrival, while she cannot comprehend what has occupied his mind. She tells him that the entire world is collapsing, yet he is calmly focused on his work. Kim responds by asking what else a chemist like him can do except create new inventions. Frustrated, the girl calls him unreasonable and tosses the bag she carried while escaping Cho's men at him. When Kim opens the bag and sees its contents, he asks her what is going on. Inside the bag is a bottle containing a legendary chemical elixir, rumored to be a potent cure capable of affecting even the gods. She explains that events unfolded just as he had predicted. Cho betrayed his brother Hyuk. Yet, Hyuk did not use the elixir for himself. She adds that she expected Hyuk to use it, but instead, he threw her the bag containing the elixir after the members of his guild had been killed. Kim finally understands everything, and the girl declares that this act has repaid her debt to him. He asks her if she is still dwelling on this matter. The girl responds, stating that, in some way, her revenge was the reason behind what happened to Hyuk, her brother. However, Kim disagrees, explaining that this is not the case. He assures her that her revenge was justified and that those people deserve their punishment, adding that her revenge and the castle affair are two separate matters. She looks at him and describes him as someone unusual and eccentric. She opens the door to leave, but he asks if she really plans to go. She replies that she is heading out to cause some chaos, mentioning that she saw Cho summoning some kind of strange and incomprehensible entity. Kim asks her what she means, and she explains that she is certain he saw the system notifications about the revoked protection. She adds that she too noticed the notification, and was puzzled when she read about the death of the qualified candidate. She goes on to clarify that the only person qualified to join the celestial constellation was Hyuk, and that she is the only one who knows the state of his condition. She continues by saying that the events have led to a major catastrophe, and that this place is no longer safe. She warns Kim that he might die too if he stays here. Kim then asks her why. If the situation is so dire, she is running away. She looks at him and replies that she is not running away because fleeing is not in her nature, pointing out that she has no one she fears losing enough to cling to life. Before leaving, she tells him to drink the elixir and not to waste it, as his brother, the noble sword saint, sacrificed his life for it. Kim replies that the elixir was originally his, prompting the girl to sarcastically ask if he is serious before leaving the house while the rain continues to fall. Afterward, Kim requests his status to be displayed, and the screen reveals that he possesses no abilities. He comments that, as expected, these are just useless data. He adds that he urgently needs a power source for his experiments, noting that this moment is the perfect time for his trial. Looking at the elixir bottle, he remarks that he cannot achieve anything he dreams of, not even in his wildest imagination, without the emerald tablet. He opens the bottle and adds that although he lacks abilities, at least he has a sound mind, and was able to create this ultimate masterpiece in alchemy. Instead of drinking the elixir, he pours it over the emerald tablet he mentioned earlier, thanking his brother Hyuk and the girl Molly for their help. He expresses doubts about whether what he is doing will work, especially in this environment. He reflects on how alchemy relies on the principle of equivalent exchange between elements, and suddenly, a surprising reaction occurs, leaving him excited and thrilled by the results. But unexpectedly, a powerful light bursts forth, frightening him as it intensifies and shoots out of the house in a massive and distinct beam. It then becomes apparent that the emerald tablet has shattered, resulting in the creation of something small and egg-like. Kim is overjoyed, believing he has succeeded, as notifications appear on the screen, awarding him 5,000 achievement points. The notifications indicate that he has accomplished 2 alchemical milestones and earned his first title, Pioneer of Alchemy. Kim examines the egg-like object as the screen displays information about it, naming it the Philosopher's Stone, a legendary artifact in alchemy. He discovers that the stone can create anything through equivalent exchange, realizing that it is an incredibly powerful binding element. While holding the Philosopher's Stone, Kim accidentally cuts his finger, causing a few drops of his blood to fall onto the stone. Immediately, a notification appears, stating that the Philosopher's Stone has bonded with Kim. Kim is shocked as the stone begins to change, taking on a very blood-like appearance. Suddenly, the stone moves toward Kim's chest and fuses with him, causing him immense pain. As the bond between Kim and the Philosopher's Stone takes hold, he is startled when a human head is thrown in front of him, with no indication of where it came from. He is horrified to discover that it is the severed head of Molly, the girl who had left moments ago. The entity that previously appeared to Cho now stands before Kim, expressing disbelief that the Philosopher's Stone is present and bonded to a human. Kim is overwhelmed by the entity's power, internally remarking on its sheer strength. The entity continues, stating that this is real, and that the planet may indeed produce a celestial god. However, Kim cannot fully grasp what the entity means. The entity elaborates, declaring that this discovery is both magnificent and entirely unexpected. At that moment, Kim's thoughts were entirely focused on the idea that this entity was responsible for Molly's death, and before that, his brother Hyuk's demise. He felt deeply frustrated by his lack of magical abilities that could enable him to avenge them. Suddenly, however, a notification appeared on the screen, informing him that the Philosopher's Stone had perfectly fused with him, granting him rare and exceptional magical abilities. He realized then that these abilities allowed him to create anything he desired, and at that moment, Kim wanted only one thing: to defeat the entity and avenge both his brother and Molly. He longed to live his life free of weakness and helplessness. At that instant, the system began processing Kim's desire, searching for a way to accomplish it. The process was excruciating, as it drained the energy of the stone fused with his body. When the system finally found a solution, Kim discovered that the energy required for equivalent exchange far exceeded his current capacity. He endured immense pain as he struggled to gather the necessary energy. After enduring great suffering, Kim managed to channel both the energy from the stone and his own personal reserves to achieve his goal. He successfully created a new artifact capable of making the entity's eye tremble. The artifact activated, and the entity felt its effects, unable to believe that a human could harm it, questioning how a mortal could influence a celestial being like itself. But Kim had exhausted all his energy and collapsed, utterly drained. At that moment, a notification appeared on the screen, declaring that, for the first time, a celestial being had been attacked. Kim earned 1,000 achievement points and was awarded a new title, the One Who Attracts Celestial Attention, a rare and unprecedented designation. Yet Kim lay motionless on the ground, too weak to move. He did not fully comprehend what had happened but was certain of one thing: he had avenged the entity for his brother and Molly, Afterward, he lost consciousness. The scene shifted to a new day, with the sun shining brightly. Kim woke up, noticing that he looked different. He opened his eyes, squinting against the sunlight streaming through the window. Glancing around in confusion, he realized that this place was his old apartment. He began to wonder if everything he had experienced had been an illusion, but he couldn't shake the memory of the intense, life-threatening moments still vivid in his mind. Suddenly his phone rang, and he was startled to find that he even had a phone, let alone one with numerous messages and missed calls. He recalled that the world had shrunk to just two nations, China and America, both in chaos, leading him to abandon phones long ago. His shock deepened when he noticed the date on the phone. It read 2030. Looking out the window, he wondered if it was possible that he had traveled 11 years back in time, reborn as his 28-year-old self. He remembered the Philosopher's Stone merging with his body and his ability to create something significant before this happened. He began to question whether he had truly returned to the past, though he felt that something was different this time. Kim told himself that, despite going back 11 years, he was not happy, as that period had been the hardest in his life. Back then, he had no power. His vision was so poor he had to wear glasses, and his senses were dulled. Yet this time, he felt free from the suffocating pressure and frustration of being unable to use magic. He acknowledged the need to assess his condition further. Opening his status screen, he saw that magical inability had been replaced with Philosopher's Stone, confirming that the stone had indeed fused with his chest. He pondered whether this meant that his fusion with the stone had transformed it into a skill he now possessed, granting his wish at that critical moment. Sitting in deep thought, he struggled to grasp that the day when he would no longer be crippled by his magical inability had finally arrived. Overwhelmed by this realization, Kim said he couldn't handle all these thoughts and needed a drink immediately. Moving toward his drink, he reflected on how his magical incapacity had disappeared and how so much had changed. When he sipped his beverage, he tasted its flavor for the first time in a long while, after years of being unable to perceive any taste. At that moment, Kim felt an overwhelming sense of joy as he gazed at his screen. He noticed that the average stat points at the first level were typically 5, yet he was only 1 point short in certain attributes. He observed that his agility stood at 4 points, vitality at 5 points, and crafting power had reached an impressive 10 points. He realized that only exceptional beginners could achieve such levels. However, he suddenly noticed something else. Magical power had been replaced by crafting power in the list. He recalled the term rare state mentioned by the system earlier and concluded that this meant he possessed a unique and extraordinary condition, which he found astounding. Kim also remembered that individuals who had rare states in the past were few and were often high-ranking individuals. Setting his drink aside, he thought about his brothers, Hyuk and Cho, who had exemplified such qualities. Laughing, he remarked that people were right when they said he was unpredictable. He was stunned to discover that he now had 1,012,500 achievement points. Although he admitted he didn't fully remember how he had accumulated such a large number, he decided to postpone thinking about it until after entering the shop. Upon accessing the titles list, he was surprised and delighted to see that his titles were linked to significant actions he had taken and were dynamic, growing over time. He reflected that even Molly, who had been a high-ranking individual, never had a title like this. He never imagined he could attain something of this nature. With great enthusiasm, he began exploring the other titles, wondering about the valuable ones he might possess. Noticing the title, The One Who Attracted the Attention of a Celestial Being, he read that it could be either a blessing or a curse, but it was undoubtedly special. However, Kim couldn't recall when he had earned that title or what it truly meant. Shrugging it off, he yawned, remarking that it was at least better than having nothing at all. He decided to focus on the most important matter. His magical incapacity was gone, and he could finally explore new possibilities. Kim began contemplating an experiment to analyze the ignition formula and adapt it to a version compatible with magic. He infused it with crafting power and observed the results displayed before him. The results were exactly as he had expected. Even within the magical category, crafting power could not be used to cast spells. He then opened a desk drawer and pulled out a piece of chalk, considering drawing a crafting circle that could revolutionize everything. He recognized that alchemy always relied on crafting diagrams, and that it held a significant advantage when magical efficiency declined. He began sketching. Suddenly, a tremendous surge of energy emanated from the Philosopher's Stone embedded in his chest. Kim felt a strange sensation as he realized his body was rejecting this method. Shocked, he understood that the Philosopher's Stone might be rejecting the technique because it was primitive and inefficient. He wondered if the stone was frustrated by his use of such outdated methods. This led him to question how he had achieved anything after the stone had fused with his body. In that moment, he felt something unusual, and his skills started to return to him, along with the memory of how to utilize them. Closing his eyes, he focused on deciding what he wanted to craft next. He chose to create a sharp spear. He designed it to resemble the spear once wielded by Cho, believing it to be an ideal choice. He also considered that the stronger the options and capabilities, the better. However, he began contemplating the cost of crafting such an item. Suddenly, the Philosopher's Stone activated, releasing immense energy from his chest. Kim decided to pour all his crafting power into creating the spear, but felt excruciating pain during the process. A notification appeared, stating that his crafting power was insufficient to meet the requirements of the intended creation. Another notification followed, indicating that the Philosopher's Stone was unstable and seeking an alternative energy source. Then, a new notification informed Kim that the stone had found a solution using the owner's resources, but required 1 million achievement points to stabilize its condition. Kim considered the substantial number, but he reflected on all the Philosopher's Stone had done for him, from curing his magical incapacity to rewinding time by 11 years. Resolving to accept the request, he declared that the stone had proven its worth. As soon as he agreed, the 1,000,000 points were used, and Kim experienced a completely new sensation. A notification confirmed that the Philosopher's Stone had returned to a stable state. At first, Kim felt a deep sense of relief and reassurance, believing that crafting alchemical items would now be much easier. Confidently, he snapped his fingers, expecting everything to proceed smoothly, but nothing happened. His frustration boiled over into rage when a notification appeared, informing him that the power was still insufficient to complete the desired creation. He felt profoundly disappointed and questioned why so much energy was needed, especially since he hadn't requested anything overly complex. He recalled the times when he had been desperate due to his magical incapacity, yet managed to create legendary artifacts. Now, despite his newfound abilities, he couldn't even craft a spear. At that moment, a new system notification appeared, requesting 500 additional points. Without hesitation, Kim agreed, reasoning that the amount was small compared to what he had spent before. He tried again with renewed enthusiasm, hoping this attempt would succeed and that the points he had invested would be worthwhile. Suddenly, a powerful thunderclap echoed, shaking the entire area and startling people on the street who had no idea of its source. At that instant, the spear Kim had requested materialized before him, as he sat in astonishment at the events unfolding around him. A new notification informed Kim that a celestial being was now observing him. Simultaneously, the scene shifted to Mount Olympus, the domain of celestial beings. Hermes, one of the celestial beings, appeared, intrigued by the sudden lightning in Olympus, and eager to understand its cause. Likewise, Athena, another celestial being, shared the same curiosity about the unexpected phenomenon. The scene returned to Kim, who couldn't believe that a celestial being was truly watching him. The situation grew even stranger when he read a notification stating that Ares, the celestial god of war, had also taken an interest. Kim began wondering why the celestial beings were suddenly paying attention to him. More notifications revealed that the celestial beings in Olympus were shocked by the effects Kim had caused. A meeting was convened in Olympus, where most of the Celestials decided to remain uninvolved, leaving only 3 leaders calm and composed. A new notification disclosed that Zeus, the ruler of Olympus, was one of the 3 who remained composed and showed significant interest in Kim. Kim felt confused and unsure of what was happening. He began to wonder whether the attention was due to remnants of power he possessed, or his title as the one who attracted celestial attention. He looked at the spear that had appeared before him, recognizing its uniqueness, but failing to understand why it had caused such a commotion. Deciding to approach, he reached out to grasp the spear, and as he held it, still enveloped in residual lightning, a new notification appeared. The notification revealed that the spear Kim had crafted was a replica of Estrav, the spear Zeus used to wield lightning, though it lacked the full power of the original. Kim began pondering the name Estrav, and wondered if this was the primary weapon used by Alexander, the Thunder Emperor. Alexander, who had lost his tribe but retained his status as a top-tier player, specialized in spear combat. Kim reflected on the immense power of Estrav, whose attacks rivaled the lightning magic of the most formidable mage players. However, he felt a twinge of disappointment comparing his replica to the original, considering his version to be pale and unimpressive by comparison. Gazing at the shattered window, Kim muttered to himself that even Zeus was merely watching without offering any support or aid, which was precisely what he had expected. But suddenly, an idea struck him. He recalled the notifications indicating that the crafting requirements had not been met due to a lack of energy. He wondered if fulfilling the requirements might allow him to craft a true version of Estrav. Realizing that his incapacity to use mana had been resolved, and that going back in time by 11 years provided a substantial advantage, he began to see the potential of crafting legendary items through equivalent exchange. This reinforced his belief that alchemy was an extraordinary power. However, without warning, the spear in his hands began to evaporate. Kim was struck with shock and dismay, unable to comprehend what was happening. His disappointment deepened as he realized he had lost the artifact he had worked so hard to obtain. Kim began to seriously reflect on the points he had spent, feeling regret over the loss of 500 points, particularly since they held significant value at the first level and weren't a trivial matter. He looked at his hands, where the spear had once been, but now there was no trace of it. He told himself that what had happened was utterly crazy and unprecedented, feeling as though he had thrown 500 achievement points into the air with nothing to show for it. Suddenly, a new notification appeared, stating that the Philosopher's Stone was reducing the recoil effect, followed by another notification indicating that the stone was restoring 50 achievement points proportionate to its grade and level. Kim wondered if this meant that some of the points he had spent on crafting had been partially recovered. He immediately requested to open the status screen to verify. When the information screen appeared, he noticed that the description of the Philosopher's Stone remained unchanged, stating that it provided absolute bonuses in all alchemical processes. However, the details on the screen suddenly shifted, revealing that the stone now had a level, and the previously empty grade field was now filled. Kim was astonished, and began to speculate whether these changes had occurred because of the stone's bond with him and his journey back in time. He realized he needed to test this hypothesis with the Philosopher's Stone. He concluded that if these changes were a result of their bond, it meant his growth would be tied to the stone's development. Suddenly, Kim felt as though the Philosopher's Stone was signaling to him, confirming his conclusion. In his apartment, Kim began training with his new skills, contemplating how magic for players in the magical class required specific spell execution, while even in alchemy, processes depended on crafting circles and basic materials. However, he realized that crafting without drawing a circle yielded far superior results, operating on an entirely different level compared to traditional methods. He continued repairing items around him, asserting that what he was doing wasn't just alchemy, but a true revolution in the magic class. Kim successfully organized his apartment and fixed everything that was broken, expressing satisfaction with the advanced crafting method he had mastered. He declared that his current level in alchemy should enable him to overcome any obstacles using these innovative techniques. As he admired the clock he had repaired, he noticed that the time read 5 p.m., and the date was January 17, 2030. Kim vividly remembered this day because it was the day he received his first summoning and was officially recognized as a player in the arena. However, he found it incredibly strange that this day coincided with the day he returned to the past. Kim delved into his thoughts, recalling the event in question, a match known as the Regional Invasion. At that time, he had been unable to use mana and couldn't even enter the battlefield, ultimately being struck by an arrow in the head. But now, with alchemy on his side, he no longer felt fear. He opened his phone to check the messages he had received and discovered that his brother Hyuk had tried to call him over 100 times. Kim felt embarrassed, as Hyuk had always looked out for him, despite Kim being the older brother. Kim began reading the messages Hyuk had sent, which included updates about joining the academy, achieving a diamond rank, and acquiring a new skill that he didn't know how to use. In another message, Hyuk asked Kim to join him to watch the sunrise, explaining that it was hard for him to go anywhere in his final year. Deeply moved by the number of messages, Kim realized how much Hyuk had cared for him despite everything. Kim remembered that his brother had always been optimistic in the past, but he hadn't understood the depth of the pain Hyuk had been hiding inside. Now, after traveling back in time, Kim realized that the true goal of Galaxy Arena had always been to elevate his younger brother. Determined to change everything from now on, Kim resolved that his first priority would be to mend his relationship with Hyuk. Kim felt nervous and uncertain about what to write to his brother Hyuk. For some inexplicable reason, it was harder than it should have been. As he tried to gather his courage and start typing, he was surprised to see a familiar name appear on his phone, Lee Young. Shocked, Kim wondered if Lee Young was still alive at this point in time. He tried to calm himself, reminding himself that the events of the past had not yet occurred and that he had a chance to change everything. Kim told himself that not only could he change what had happened, but he must do so, no matter the cost. At that moment, a notification appeared congratulating him on being selected for the Arena training program, and informing him that the official summoning to attend would happen soon. Kim then understood the meaning of the summoning he had been anticipating. Memories of Kim's previous life came flooding back, accompanied by a strong determination to rewrite his history entirely differently this time. He recalled witnessing Molly's death before his very eyes, how his life had been filled with misery, weakness, and misfortune, constantly hindering his progress. He resolved to fix everything and immediately requested entry into the summoning. In a new scene, Kim found himself at the summoning site, where the contestants were welcomed, and it was announced that the goal was to either seize control of the area or eliminate the other competitors, who numbered 100. Kim stood observing the setting and told himself that it was the same forest he had expected, strengthening his belief that he had truly returned to the past. As the contest officially began, Kim decided to adopt a safer strategy this time. However, he was taken aback by a notification informing him that Zeus, the ruler of Olympus, had become his personal patron and assigned him a specific task to develop his abilities. Kim was stunned, as the patronage and task system usually activated only after the contest concluded, not at its beginning. Another notification clarified that Zeus had taken a particular interest in him due to the title, the one who attracted celestial attention, and that completing the assigned task would earn him a reward of 1,000 points. Kim considered the reward incredibly tempting and told himself that he had no choice but to aim for first place. Seizing the moment, he requested that Zeus add an extra 100 points to the reward. Zeus was not pleased with the request, and the sky turned into a stormy thunderstorm. Laughing, Kim jokingly said he was only kidding. He walked on, thinking to himself that Zeus, despite being the ruler of Olympus, seemed rather stingy. Elsewhere in the forest, a person was found dead with an arrow in their neck. The killer, Hyung, was elated, reveling in the freedom to kill whoever he pleased during the contest. As he retrieved the arrow from the victim's body, he remarked that Arena was an essential guild and that the materials he used were of the highest quality. It was revealed that Hyung was a member of the Sungsam Guild. Hyung smiled and said that his guild had only tasked him with survival, but he aimed for much more than that. He recalled being expelled from the academy, which he considered cursed, and vowed not to settle for being just an ordinary guild member. He added that the academy would regret dismissing him, as he believed himself to be exceptionally talented. The scene shifted back to Kim, who was walking through the forest, searching for something specific. Shortly after, he arrived at a small stream and told himself he had found what he was looking for, noting that he hadn't seen this place in a long time. From the top of a tree on the opposite side of the stream, Hyung was watching Kim. Observing that Kim was unarmed and unequipped, Hyung saw it as the perfect opportunity to kill him. He began preparing his arrow, thinking to himself that even if Kim had decent abilities, his lack of equipment rendered him worthless. Hyung fired the arrow at Kim, relishing the free-for-all nature of this contest and the thrill of taking another life. As the arrow reached Kim, he snapped his fingers, shattering it instantly, and remarked that he had found what he was looking for. He then turned his gaze toward Hyung, who stood atop the tree, and wondered if this was the same person who had killed him with an arrow in his previous life. Snapping his fingers again, Kim caused the branch Hyung was standing on to break. Hyung fell from the tree and began running, enraged by what had happened, questioning whether Kim belonged to the magic class. Hyung abruptly stopped and declared that he wouldn't lose to someone unarmed. He readied another arrow, aiming it at Kim, but before he could fire, an explosion erupted behind him, destroying his prized bow. Kim appeared in front of him, commenting that Hyung moved better than he had anticipated, and revealing that he had actually been aiming for his head, not the bow. Continuing, Kim told Hyung that for someone of his level, death wasn't the worst thing that could happen. Hyung burst into laughter, drawing 2 daggers to attack Kim, demanding to know what he meant by that. During his assault, Kim asked if Hyung's swift movements were skills from rank B. Hyung was taken aback, wondering how Kim knew such details. But before he could continue his attack, a sharp protrusion emerged from the ground, effortlessly taking his life. Before dying, Hyung asked if Kim was a student at the academy, to which Kim replied that the academy wouldn't accept someone like him. Kim lowered the protrusion and sat beside Hyung's lifeless body, commenting that judging by his equipment, Hyung was likely a new recruit in a prestigious guild and might have access to advanced communication gear. For this reason, Kim remarked, the shock of reality wouldn't be too severe for Hyung, but in a real battlefield, he would have been dead for good. It became evident that the match was taking place in a virtual world. Kim continued, explaining that he had entered the match using a simple device. He pointed out that leaving the battlefield in the real world meant death, unlike in the virtual arena, where it simply meant logging out. Kim elaborated on the impact of unregulated arenas, saying they had caused diseases to spread in the regions where they occurred and unleashed monsters so powerful that no one could defeat them. He added that the number of high-ranking players after ordinary arena matches reflected a nation's strength. However, Kim noted that South Korea, after the incident, became like the small nations that had disappeared before, failing to stop the spread of disease and ultimately falling to ruin. He reminded himself that this hadn't happened yet, and that he needed to focus on the present. Kim decided to check the match results, finding that the first-place contestant had 2 kills, while the second place had only 1. He was surprised by the low numbers, given the time that had passed since the match began. He reasoned that the low count could be because everyone was playing cautiously at the start, which made perfect sense. Even though it was just a training match, it simulated a gold-tier territorial takeover event, meaning all participants had high ranks and strong abilities, along with good equipment. The greater a participant's gains, the more fearful they became of losing them. Kim noticed that some players had entered point-gathering zones. He observed that their collected points represented only 4% of the total, indicating they might have just reached the location, prioritizing point collection over kills to secure first place. Nevertheless, Kim decided to hone his crafting skills by taking out a few competitors first, believing this was a good opportunity to root out the cowards hiding in the shadows. In the next scene, a contestant was seen running in fear, describing the person chasing him as insane and abnormal. Suddenly, a sharp protrusion shot up from the ground, piercing the contestant and killing him instantly, just like Hyung. Kim appeared afterward, lowering the protrusion again, and remarking that the contestant had indeed been very fast. Examining the body, Kim noted that despite the heavy equipment the contestant was wearing, his speed indicated it was one of his standout skills. Kim admitted that if he hadn't struck first, he wouldn't have been able to catch him due to his speed. At that moment, another contestant armed with a weapon appeared and began pursuing Kim. This new challenger attacked Kim with swift precision, aiming to take him down with his weapon. However, Kim anticipated the attack and repeated his earlier technique, piercing the attacker's body with a sharp protrusion and finishing him in an instant. Kim recognizes the person he has just killed as Hyens, a notorious player known for stealing others' kills and claiming them as his own. Shortly afterward, notifications appear indicating that Kim's crafting level has increased due to his training, and the level of the Philosopher's Stone has also risen. Kim comments that leveling up at the first stage is expected and natural, but he didn't know the Philosopher's Stone could also increase in level. He continues, saying that his strategy of hunting cowards has yielded better results than he anticipated. Looking at the body of the person he killed, Kim notes that he has now eliminated 11 opponents, which means he no longer has to worry about being attacked from behind. He realizes that his current location is near a point collection zone and decides to head there to start gathering points. As he approaches the point collection zone, something strange catches his eye, causing him to quickly hide behind a tree to assess the situation. He discovers a large number of contestants who have been killed just outside the point collection zone. Unsure of how and why this happened, Kim requests an update on the match's progress. He finds that 4 contestants are close to reaching the required points. Analyzing the data, he realizes that all 4 have been among the top-ranked players since the match began, suggesting they have formed a team, which is against the rules of the match. Staying behind the tree, Kim thinks about how desperate these players must be to aim for a high rank by resorting to such tactics in a training program, which he considers utterly ridiculous. Kim tries to deduce the location of these cheaters, and whether they have set up a trap inside the point collection zone. He concludes that their strategy likely involves one player with a shield in the front for protection, an archer covering the rear, and 2 sword wielders guarding the flanks, creating a formation that is nearly impossible to penetrate. Kim reflects that he had been trying to conserve his energy since the start of the match because the task reward had been halved, but now he has no other choice. He decides to use his full power, declaring that if they want to cheat their way through, he'll turn the tables on them himself. The scene shifts to the team's archer, a woman named Lee, who is standing idly, chewing gum out of boredom. The shield bearer asks her if she sees anyone approaching, to which she replies that it seems no one else is coming. He asks her again if she's certain, or if her aura has weakened and affected her vision. She responds that her enhanced sight relies on magic, not aura. The shield bearer comments that it must be great for her, especially since her strong aura helped her achieve such a high number of kills. Lee retorts, asking why he's complaining to her about his low kill count, adding that she didn't force him to take on the shield bearer role. Enraged by her comment, he replies that no one chooses the abilities they are given. Their argument continues until one of the sword wielders steps in to stop them, asking them to focus. The sword wielder then informs the shield bearer, whose name is One, that he has achieved 60% of the required points, and they will help him increase his kill count. One is surprised but delighted, expressing his trust in the sword wielder, who appears to be the team leader. Lee then asks the leader, Oppa, if she can leave the point collection zone because she's bored due to the lack of activity. Noticing his hesitation, she reassures him that there's no need to worry about Kim, as she has checked the names of all the guild members and couldn't find his name. Oppa replies that this is precisely the problem. Someone like Kim, who isn't known to anyone, has managed to kill 11 contestants so far. Lee responds to Oppa, dismissing his concerns and arguing that most of the contestants in the match are too weak to pose a threat. She adds that Kim, or whoever he is, must have achieved his kill count through trickery. She questions why, if he were truly strong, he hasn't yet reached the point collection zone. Grabbing Oppa's arm, Lee suggests that if he's still worried, they could move out together in the formation they've prepared to sweep the area outside the collection zone, emphasizing that they trained extensively for this match. Oppa recalls that Lee has a point. The entire team had lost and been eliminated in their previous match. Because of that, they had worked hard this time, training far more intensively than before. Thanks to this effort, their guild, Scorpion, provided them with high-quality equipment. Now they're operating as a team, but Lee seems distracted at the moment. She assures Oppa that he should trust their teamwork, insisting that no unknown player could be a real threat to them. However, as she speaks, she gets distracted again, her gaze drifting away. Suddenly, using her magical sight, she spots someone hiding behind a distant tree. Quickly raising her bow and nocking an arrow, She alerts Oppa to the person's presence, addressing Kim directly and informing him that she can see him hiding. She fires the arrow at Kim, but he creates an earthen barrier that blocks the arrow, shattering it in half. Lee and the rest of the team are stunned by what just happened, and Oppa considers the possibility that this is some kind of magic. Kim, thinking to himself that he had been well hidden, remarks aloud that Lee's magical sight must be rank B. Lee is astonished and asks how he knows the rank of her skill. Kim replies that she can attribute his knowledge to his extensive study of skills. Determined to test his expertise, Lee knocks another arrow, declaring that she'll see if his claims hold up. Before she can fire, Oppa approaches Kim and asks if he's the Kim who has killed 11 people. Kim asks who he is, prompting Oppa to introduce himself. Kim then comments that Oppa must be first rank and clearly the team leader. Oppa replies that he doesn't want to waste time and extends an invitation for Kim to join their team immediately. The rest of the team objects to this proposal. Lee questions what Oppa is thinking, while Juan, the shield bearer, asks if he's lost his mind, wondering how they can ensure that Kim won't betray them and attack from behind. Oppa explains that Kim, despite lacking any special equipment, has managed to kill 11 people, which indicates he's an S-rank magic user. He adds that he plans to make Kim the core player of the team. Lee grabs Oppa's shoulder, insisting that he's gone crazy, pointing out that if Kim is a mage and turns against them, he could kill them all. Oppa counters that having a mage in their team offers far greater benefits than risks, but Lee remains unconvinced. Brushing her hand off, Oppa explains that magic users are rare, even within the Scorpion Guild. Oppa silently reflects that killing 11 people is no small feat, and even if it was achieved through trickery, it's still an impressive number. Turning back to Lee, he attempts to persuade her that having a mage in their team would elevate their status within the guild. At this point, Kim intervenes, sarcastically commenting that they're discussing this as though he's already agreed to Oppa's offer. Oppa asks if Kim is upset because he assumed his agreement, saying it's natural since mages are always arrogant. Kim replies that this assumption is incorrect and apologizes, acknowledging that mages are often known for their arrogance, but he isn't like that. Kim then asks what their problem is. Oppa responds that it's about forming a team. Kim presses further, asking what exactly the issue is with their team formation, and questions if Oppa is serious, pointing out that it's against the rules. Oppa is taken aback and remarks that if the match were being broadcast, the public would criticize him for it. Kim looks at them and says he doesn't care because there's no punishment for breaking the rules, so why should he bother with public opinion? He adds that Oppa's arrogance is misplaced, considering he's only killed a few weak players. Oppa responds to Kim, saying that their guild cares only about results, and as long as the results are good, nothing else matters. He adds that the entire team trained together, and is far superior to the players Kim has defeated. Then, Oppa tells Kim that it would be best for him to quietly join their team, warning that this is his final chance. Kim replies that he expected such words from members of the Scorpion Guild, adding that there's no point in continuing the discussion. He begins to use his abilities, addressing Oppa and warning him that he should worry about his own life rather than Kim's opportunities. Using the same formula as before, Kim unleashes a thunderstrike that engulfs the entire area. Oppa's team is overwhelmed by the intense light and sound from the sudden thunder. Since it's the same technique, Kim successfully crafts a spear similar to the one he made earlier. One, the shield bearer, sees the spear and feels terrified, questioning what's happening. Kim grips the spear and declares that the first place is his, wondering aloud why he ever considered something as pathetic as joining their team. Furious, Oppa tells Kim that negotiations are over and calls out to Lee. Lee immediately responds, saying she knows what to do, then raises her bow and fires an arrow at Kim. At the same moment, Kim points his thunder-charged spear at them. A massive surge of lightning energy rushes toward them, leaving them frozen in place, unable to react or comprehend what's happening. Their screams echo as they collapse to the ground, unconscious. Kim feels satisfied with how he used the spear for the first time, noting that he achieved this with only 10% of its power. However, as he looks at the team, he feels that something is missing. Suddenly he notices Oppa rushing at him from behind, sword in hand, attempting to kill him. Realizing that Oppa managed to escape the initial thunderstrike, Kim aims the spear at him again. But before the lightning can reach Oppa, Kim notices that he vanishes from sight. Kim deduces that Oppa is an A-rank player with a shadow movement skill, allowing him to evade the first attack as well. In that moment, Oppa reappears, using the same skill to position himself behind Kim undetected. Seizing the opportunity, Oppa raises his sword, shouting at Kim to die, and strikes. However, Kim suddenly snaps his fingers, causing a sharp protrusion to emerge from the ground, piercing Oppa instantly. In shock, Oppa asks how Kim managed to do that after expending so much energy with the lightning attack. Kim points the spear at Oppa and tells him that what he did was entirely different, adding that there's no need to waste the current opportunity. He strikes Oppa with the spear's thunderous energy again, finishing him off and knocking him out of the match. Notifications appear, announcing Kim as the winner of the match, with a total of 15 kills, earning him a new title, Ruler of the Training Match. Kim also receives a notification of gaining 100 achievement points, though he feels frustrated, thinking that if he hadn't used the Estrav spear, he could have earned 1,000 points. At that moment, a new notification appears, stating that Zeus is pleased with his performance and grants him an additional 100 points. Kim calculates his total points and finds they now amount to 750. He notes that these points will carry over into the real world, filling him with excitement for what lies ahead. The scene shifts to the Scorpion Guild's headquarters, where the 4-member team stands in the office of the guild's vice president. The vice president appears furious about their results, asking Oppa if what happened made any sense. He adds that this wasn't a sneaky ambush or a loss against another team, but rather a complete defeat at the hands of one unarmed person. Oppa apologizes, admitting he has no excuses for what happened, but the vice president replies that he's not blaming anyone for losing if it was due to skill, as skill is something money can't compensate for. The vice president approaches Oppa and slaps him hard across the face, expressing his fury over their loss despite being a team. He then turns his gaze to the rest of the players, declaring that he cannot comprehend or overlook what happened. He adds that forming a team only to lose in such a manner tarnishes the guild's reputation and asks if they understand the gravity of the situation. Oppa apologizes again as the team leader, taking full responsibility for what happened, but the vice president dismisses his apology outright. He hands Oppa a stack of papers, which Oppa accepts with confusion, unsure of their contents. The vice president explains that the documents are a penalty contract designed for fools, who not only fail in a training program despite full guild support, but also create problems for the rest of the guild. He informs Oppa that all future rewards the team earns over the coming years will go to the Scorpion Guild and orders him to read and sign the contract. One tries to protest, questioning if the contract isn't excessive. However, the vice president cuts him off, grabs him by the neck, and threatens him, demanding to know if he's foolish enough to face the consequences of his defiance. Struggling to breathe, Juan apologizes with difficulty, and the vice president finally releases him. The vice president then orders the rest of the team to sign the contract immediately, which they do reluctantly. The scene shifts to Seoul, where the headquarters of the Sungsam Guild is shown. Guild Director Park is seen speaking with 3 players who participated in the match, including Hyung. Park expresses his disbelief, stating that it's hard to comprehend what happened. He tells them he doesn't blame them for losing, but the events defy logic. Hyung responds, saying he feels the same, adding that he's shocked by Kim's reckless use of magic and the absurdity of him achieving 15 kills. Another player remarks that Kim did all this alone, managing to take down a team of 4 ranked players. The third player confirms this, having watched the battlefield updates on the screen after being eliminated from the match. Park reassures them that he'll handle all the details through the report and asks them to leave for now. The 3 players try to speak again, but Park reassures them that the Sungsam Guild does not punish players for losing matches. He advises them to focus on improving their performance next time. After they leave, Park comments on Kim's feat of single-handedly defeating a 4-person team. He asks his assistant, Yoon, if she's discovered anything. Yoon replies that they're still working on it. Park then asks if she'd mind being called his deputy, to which she smiles and says she wouldn't. Yoon places a report in front of Park, which he skims through, discovering that the 4-person team was from the Scorpion Guild. Yoon confirms this, noting that 3 were B-rank players and 1 was A-rank. Park wonders how the Scorpion Guild managed to gather such talent, but points out that the real question is how Kim defeated them alone. Yoon explains that Kim belongs to the magic class and may have used extremely powerful fire-based abilities. However, Park questions how someone at level 1 could achieve such a feat, adding that even if it were possible, casting such a spell would take considerable time. Yoon points out that Kim executed his magic with just a snap of his fingers, speculating that his abilities might be S-rank or higher. Park responds that there's something more significant at play, as even someone with incredible abilities would have limitations at level 1. Yoon asks if Park is suggesting that Kim possesses celestial powers. He replies that it's the only plausible explanation for what happened. Yoon objects, saying Kim is merely a level 1 player who succeeded in the training match, making it unlikely that he has celestial support. Park continued to reflect on the possibility that what was happening might indeed be real, especially considering that since Arena's emergence in 2015, celestial entities had only shown interest in diamond ranks and above, with no attention paid to lower ranks. Yoon commented that this certainly indicated Kim wasn't ordinary, and might be something entirely different. He added that regardless of the truth, it was clear that this individual needed to join their guild. Yoon also remarked that other guilds wouldn't stay silent either, and laughed, saying they'd have to put in extra effort. However, Yoon was startled when she saw Park speaking to someone else she couldn't see, addressing them as the guild leader and asking their opinion. Confused, Yoon watched as flames suddenly appeared in the office where they were. At that moment, a beautiful woman appeared, addressing Park, and saying that they were already in the office, and that he could address her informally since they were alone. She then asked when he had noticed her presence, despite her using an A-rank stealth skill. Park replied that he hadn't noticed her initially but felt her presence when they began discussing Kim. He then inquired about the reason for her visit and her upcoming graduation. She sat on the desk in front of him, telling him she was bored and that the academy no longer held any significance for her. Park suggested she participate in Arena instead of focusing on the academy, to which she replied that she had already done so. She then asked him angrily if he had watched her live broadcast. Park apologized, explaining that he had been busy investigating some unexpected reports. She dismissed his apology, grabbed the report in front of him, and asked if it was the one that had left Director Park so stunned. Angered, Park told her it was inappropriate to act that way, as the information in the report was confidential to the guild, addressing her as Miss Yu. However, she insisted, holding on to the report and reading it, stating that there was no issue since she was the owner of the guild. Park didn't relent, retorting that even so she couldn't access the report, and demanded its return. But she held the report out of his reach, scanning it until she came across Kim's name. Meanwhile, Kim had just left the match when he heard the system announce his return. Exhausted, he threw himself onto the bed, relieved to finally have the day behind him, only to receive notifications that his level had increased by 2 ranks. Rising to check the notifications, Kim discovered that the Philosopher's Stone had also leveled up by 1 rank. He remarked that based on these results, he could have reached level 3 by now if not for the Philosopher's Stone. He requested his status display as Pioneer of Alchemy, and found that he was indeed level 3, though he noted that his strength, agility, and vitality remained weak compared to his crafting power. Kim observed that while the gap was still significant, his current state was much better, as his lower level combined with the higher level of the Philosopher's Stone made him stand out more in Arena. He reasoned that this made sense, since most Arena participants were typically around level 3. If he alone possessed hidden additional levels, it would be a substantial advantage, allowing him to easily outperform all the other participants. Satisfied with this, Kim decided to check the title's status. He found that the title hadn't changed, recalling Molly's frustration when her title didn't change, making him realize this was normal. Kim then noticed a new title, Conqueror of Educational Matches, awarded for achieving a decisive victory. He commented that no benefits were listed for this title. Reflecting on the similarity among titles, he observed that titles often seemed undervalued for some unknown reason, and noted that obtaining a title that grows early on was rare, but not undesirable. He reasoned that having multiple titles meant more rewards from the achievement store, a feature available only to gold-ranked players, making titles crucial in such cases. Kim began contemplating the best investment for his current points, wondering if he should allocate them all to crafting energy. He remarked that while the Philosopher's Stone was powerful, it still adhered to the principle of equivalent exchange in alchemy. Kim reflects on the 1,500,000 points he previously spent, feeling irritated and wondering why he's thinking about it now. He realizes that focusing solely on enhancing crafting power might not be the best choice, especially since even high-ranked combat mages rely on their physical abilities to gain an edge. Thus, neglecting this aspect would be unwise. He then considers the possibility of raising all his skills to the intermediate level of 5. At that moment, a new idea strikes him, and he asks the Philosopher's Stone if it can create anything, regardless of what it is. The stone responds with a signal that Kim interprets as confirmation, prompting him to ask if it could create a human body. However, the stone remains silent, leading Kim to understand that this is impossible, likely because human transmutation is forbidden in alchemy. He recalls that familiar transformations often involve creating fantastical creatures, which sometimes appear as monsters in the arena. Kim plans to use these techniques for good, just as scientific advancements benefited humanity in the 21st century. Yet he questions himself, wondering if he would only use this power for good, and answers confidently that this is his intention. He wants to become stronger for that reason. Later, he hesitates and admits that if circumstances forced him to make different decisions, he might not be able to predict his actions since he has critical goals to achieve. At that moment, the Philosopher's Stone communicates with him again, and Kim responds, affirming that he fully understands the risks of human transmutation. But the stone surprises him by stating that the problem isn't what Kim thinks. Confused, Kim asks the stone about the phrase, the artifact versus the emerald tablet, and its origin. He wonders if the stone is referring to another artifact similar to the emerald tablet, filled with comparable knowledge. After the stone responds, Kim comments that it makes sense, as the emerald tablet contained no information about human transmutation. He recalls that when he first acquired the emerald tablet, he thought it was a test of qualification. He successfully passed the test at that time, which led the tablet to acknowledge him as its owner. The sole reason he sought the emerald tablet back then was that it was an artifact tied exclusively to its owner, unusable by anyone else, and would burn thieves to ashes if they attempted to steal it. He adds that the tablet kills anyone who fails its qualification test, and admits feeling terrified when he remembers that now, realizing that if he had failed, he would have been reduced to ashes. Kim asks the Philosopher's Stone if it's worried he might fail the qualification test for this new formula, and whether it would be better to abandon the idea of human transmutation. The stone surprises him with its response, prompting Kim to ask if it's truly possible to avoid the penalties of failing qualifications. He then asks the stone for a definitive answer to one question, whether it can prevent death. After hearing the stone's response, Kim declares that he's ready to officially begin, knowing that as long as he can't die, he can recover from anything. Kim allocates all his points to enhancing his crafting power, and asks the stone for a general idea about the material needed for the formula. The stone conveys that the formula resembles the emerald tablet, but with a different color. Kim acknowledges this, focusing on the idea and imagining the color as a deep black purple instead of emerald green. He notes that the information shared by the stone is presented to him in a way similar to the latest smart devices, making it easy to comprehend. However, a notification appears, stating that his current crafting power is insufficient to complete the required formula. Kim remarks that he expected this to happen. Another notification follows, indicating that the Philosopher's Stone is requesting 10,000 achievement points to complete the equivalent exchange, and the system asks if he agrees. Frustrated, Kim angrily questions whether the stone is seriously demanding such a large number of points, noting that he hadn't anticipated this figure. His anger grows when the stone tells him that this is a small price to pay. Kim attempts to negotiate, pointing out that the Estrav spear itself only cost 500 points, but the stone doesn't allow him to finish his argument. Kim lamented the loss of his 12,300 points in one go, but he quickly calmed himself, reminding himself that there are no gains without risks. He pressed the button to transfer the points and received a notification confirming the deduction of 10,000 achievement points. Immediately after, he felt an unusual sensation as immense energy coursed through his body, admitting that this energy felt familiar. Standing in the middle of a massive aura surrounding him, Kim began snapping his fingers again. Suddenly, he noticed something strange, a purple hue swirling around his body, gathering predominantly around his hands. Curious, Kim asked the Philosopher's Stone if this entity was alive. At that moment, new notifications arrived, informing him that he had successfully created an unregistered legendary artifact and earned 5,000 achievement points. Moreover, his title, Pioneer of Alchemy, had evolved, granting him a new advantage, a 5% reduction in energy consumption for crafting. Kim remarked that this meant his efficiency increased with his level, and if his title continued to evolve, the percentage reduction in energy consumption would grow as well. Smiling, he commented that this reduction in crafting energy was the reason titles were considered growth type. As he reflected on this achievement, new notifications informed him that his accomplishments had drawn the attention of celestial entities, including the Black Goat, and that discussions about him were happening in Arena. He admitted he didn't fully understand what this meant. Simultaneously, a new notification outlined the capabilities of the Obsidian Tablet, revealing that it was a perfect replica with immense and limitless power. Frustrated, Kim exclaimed that this was also just a replica like Estrav, and he had spent 10,000 achievement points only to create a replica, whereas Estrav cost just 500 points. He then asked if the information about the Obsidian Tablet meant he wouldn't experience negative rebound effects from this formula. The Philosopher's Stone responded, and Kim looked at his hands with relief, reassured that he wouldn't endure the agony he had experienced with the previous formula. Examining the Obsidian Tablet, Kim remarked that its effects were permanent and wouldn't dissipate. He added that if achievement points increased completeness by 20% per 10,000 points, this would mean a gain of 40,000 achievement points, 4 times his investment. Overjoyed, Kim embraced the Obsidian Tablet, calling it an incredible creation. At that moment, the Philosopher's Stone communicated with him again, and Kim reassured it that he was prepared for any penalties resulting from unqualified use. Kim pulled out his phone and told the Philosopher's Stone that if anything happened to him, he could notify his brother with a single touch. He added that he was accustomed to pain, and reminded the stone that people like him had suffered greatly due to the diseases spread by Arena. Kim reaffirmed that intense pain and extreme pressure were necessary to achieve great rewards. He confidently stated that if his calculations were correct, there would be no penalties this time. Focusing on the Obsidian Tablet, purple tendrils once again emerged from it, swirling around Kim as they had initially. This time, he felt no adverse effects, as he had anticipated. He thought about the original owner of the tablet, the celestial Black Goat, and concluded that anything tied to such entities wouldn't harm him. Suddenly, a new notification appeared, stating that the replica Obsidian Tablet sought to merge with the Philosopher's Stone. Without warning, Kim began experiencing excruciating pain, and purple tendrils sprouted from his body. He was even more shocked when he realized the Philosopher's Stone had agreed to the merger with the obsidian tablet. Kim tried to stop the process, asking the Philosopher's Stone what this meant, but the merging had already begun, intensifying his pain. Worried, he watched as the purple tendrils spread throughout his body, and he questioned whether his body would remain intact after all this. Kim screams loudly, pleading with the Philosopher's Stone to stop what it's doing, declaring that this is madness. After some time, the merging process concludes, and Kim receives notifications indicating that the Philosopher's Stone's level has increased due to the merge, granting it new abilities. Meanwhile, Kim lies on the ground, completely exhausted. In a new scene, a new match begins in Arena, accompanied by a notification stating that today's game mode is Attack, with 50 participants. The primary condition is teamwork, as players are divided into teams of 5. At this moment, players start entering the match. Hyung appears among the participants, expressing surprise at the attack mode following the educational match. He comments that the teamwork requirement makes it even more challenging. Hyung notes that they are still in the evaluation testing phase and wonders why a silver-ranked difficulty match is being held at this stage. He concludes that it might be due to the monster he defeated in the previous match, but he sees this as a new opportunity to prove himself. At this moment, a group of players enters, discussing why attack mode was chosen again instead of defense. One of them speculates that it might be because someone scored highly in the previous match, while another complains that the match has become difficult because of this person. The first reassures his companion that he'll take care of them. Hyung notices the emblem on the incoming team's equipment and appears surprised. It becomes clear that the emblem belongs to the Scorpion Guild, and Hyung realizes that these players are from Scorpion. Hyung reflects that every rank includes both good and notorious players, but Scorpion is an entirely different case. He explains that the first distinguishing feature of Scorpion is that they are a massive guild no one can ignore. Secondly, their infamy lies in their twisted style, as they focus on realism for victory, but in truth, they're nothing more than a gang of villains. Hyung feels that this match has turned into their personal celebration, and he becomes anxious, knowing how much effort he has put in to stand out in this match. The members of Scorpion notice Hyung, and their leader comments that the teams are supposed to consist of 5 members, yet Hyung is standing alone. One of the members remarks that perhaps his team hasn't assembled yet. The leader quips that they'll soon discover the standout stars they'll face today, and Hyung recognizes their arrogance as always. They then notice the emblem on Hyung's equipment and ask if he's from the Sungsam Guild, mocking him for belonging to that guild. The leader asks for Hyung's name and remarks that he hasn't heard of him before. Pointing to Hyung's equipment, the leader comments that it looks like he just came out of the educational match, adding sarcastically that even in a chaotic match, Sungsam wouldn't provide its members with equipment below grade C. He continues, stating that Sungsam is known for supplying grade A equipment to members who perform exceptionally well in matches, gaining fame for their flamboyance. He mocks Hyung, saying that if he had received a good evaluation in the educational match, he would have received top-tier equipment, but from the look of his gear, it seems he failed the ranking test. Hyung feels an intense rage at their remarks, but decides to remain patient and endure them. Although Hyung strongly desires to retaliate and beat them all for their mockery, he knows they are stronger than him, and that any reckless action would result in his loss. The leader approaches him and simply orders him to follow their instructions, assuring him they'll handle everything. Hyung realizes that what they mean is that they'll take all the rewards for themselves, and his hatred toward them deepens. At that moment, another participant arrives at the match site. Hyung is stunned to see that the new arrival is none other than Kim, the player who was eliminated in the previous match. However, the leader of the Scorpion Guild team continues to mock and laugh, commenting that this situation is entirely unexpected. He adds that Arena's matchmaking system has become very strange, laughing as he says he understood the Sungsam Guild player, but wonders who this fool is that entered without any equipment. Kim walks toward him and politely asks if he was the one being referred to as a fool, and whether the leader meant him personally. The leader, ignoring the courtesy, raises his spiked ball close to Kim's face, sarcastically asking who Kim thinks he's talking to. Kim calmly asks if the leader is insulting him, sighs, and prepares to respond. But suddenly, the Philosopher's Stone reacts on its own, communicating with Kim. The stone begins responding to the leader directly, hurling insults and threats that Kim himself hadn't said. While only Kim can hear the stone, it threatens the leader, saying it will slice off his face, fry it in oil, and eat it for dinner. Kim tries to quiet the stone, patting his chest to calm it, but it doesn't stop. Instead, Kim starts feeling discomfort in his stomach. At that moment, the Philosopher's Stone asks Kim how he expects it to respond politely to someone like this. Worse yet, the stone demands that Kim keep patting it to soothe it further. Kim thinks to himself that if he'd known this would happen, he would have stopped the obsidian tablet from merging with the Philosopher's Stone at any cost. He realizes no one could have anticipated that a minor reaction would escalate to this degree. Meanwhile, the Scorpion Guild team members watch Kim, completely baffled by what he's doing, assuming they've frightened him significantly. Their leader shouts at Kim again, mocking him and asking if he's stepped back out of fear. One of the members remarks that there's no need to ask. It's obvious he's terrified. Another adds that Kim is probably not affiliated with any guild at all. The leader laughs and tells his team that Kim might be one of those freeloaders exploiting kind-hearted people who lack equipment. Addressing Kim, he adds that now he's dealing with Kuel, someone far tougher than the opponents he faced previously. Kim realizes all this talk is meant to criticize his lack of equipment, so he responds, saying if that's what they think, they're entirely mistaken. Kuel becomes enraged by Kim's comment, slamming his spiked ball into the ground and questioning whether Kim thinks they're fools to fall for such words. Kim smiles and asks if his name is Kuel, then remarks that this situation is incredibly amusing. He explains that at this level, players who use magic or support abilities often don't rely on equipment, implying that Kuel's lack of understanding indicates inexperience in matches. Noticing the guild emblem on their gear, Kim asks if they're from the Scorpion Guild. Kuel laughs, assuming Kim is trying to talk about their guild to get closer to them. But Kim responds that he doesn't respect people he doesn't even consider human. The team members grow furious and hurl insults at Kim, questioning how he dares to speak to them that way. Kuel steps forward, raising his spiked ball, asking if Kim thinks he can talk to them like that. He then charges at Kim in a fit of rage, declaring that he'll crush him, swinging his weapon at him.